another edition of Get It, Got It Good. I am your host, Naja Wilhite. I am really looking forward to today. As you know, we get into every area and aspect of your life and bring you knowledge. You know, making sure you get the information, making sure you understand where you can go to get more, and then it's all good, right? So today, we have a family man with us, a father, an artist. He is a co-founder, CEO of a different of what is it called? There, Discover Me, Recover Me.
You got it.
There you go.
You
Now, I am gonna let him say his last name because, like mine, Naja. People butcher it all the time. It is what it is. I don't want to butcher this man's last name.
I've been dealing with it my whole life, so you know what? It's almost like tradition.
Fakunle?
You know what?
Wait, okay, no. Honestly, that was wrong, right? Wait, you're going to have to do it for me.
All right, it's Fakunle. It's only 3 syllables. You know what? I don't want to go off on a tangent like we just started, but the thing that's always blown me is like, it's only 3 syllables. Fakunle. And it's not till and I'll admit this myself. It's only until recently that I started pronouncing it the way that actual Nigerians pronounce it, because the emphasis is on the ah. So I used to say Fakunle, so the emphasis would be here, but it's actually Fakunle.
Fakunle.
Fakunle. Yeah.
I have to write it like I say it.
Oh, that's totally fine. And usually when people ask me how to pronounce it, that's what I do is I'll write it out phonetically. You know what I mean? So to me, it seems it's not that hard. There's an A, there's a U, and there's an E. You're like, what else would you pronounce
but
it?
It's your name. Look, my name ain't that hard to me. To me.
Right.
But at least yours is spelled kind of like a sound. My name,
right, and that's
N-Y-S-I-A. Yeah.
Well, consider some people say like Nicaea. I would say my first instinct would be Nicaea to pronounce the whole thing, not Niger.
Yeah, exactly.
So I get that. Okay, and we're on.
It is what it is. My name is from an African river. Ask my Uncle Michael why he named me that. It works because, I never stop moving. But hey.
I dig it. I mean, it's cool when your name actually matches up with your personality.
Indeed.
So, David is Hebrew for beloved. I figure a lot of people love me. At least my family.
And you're very into the love, right?
And I am into love. Yeah, I mean, my piece is the heart in the middle because it's all about love. My middle name Olawuyi, which
Don't ask me to say that.
No, it's cool. But again, if you spell it out, it's pretty straightforward. Okay. But nevertheless, so Olawuyi is Yoruba for one who has wealth and prestige. Cool. I'm working on the prestige. I'm getting pretty good at that. The wealth part, I'm working on that too, as you know. So I'm getting there. And then Fakunle, right, exactly. And Fakunle, also Yoruba, is the much praised house of Ifa. Now, Ifa is another word for, Orunmila. Now, Orunmila is an Orisha, and Orishas are spirits within the Yoruba tradition, like the Yoruba faith. So the main god in the Yoruba religion is Olodumare. That's like God. And then there's different manifestations of Olodumare. And then the manifestation of wisdom is Orunmila, also known as Ifa. So basically what that tells me is, although my family is Christian now, at one point they practiced the Yoruba religion, and their personal Orisha was Orunmila, Ifa. So it's about wisdom. And I fancy myself someone who kind of gets it. I'm always working to get it, but I'm always open to passing on my insight and whatever knowledge and wisdom that I do have to others, because that's how you know and that's how you learn. And people did it to me. I am a product of my environment in a good way. I'm a product of the people, my parents, my godparents, my extended family, my artistic family, my cultural family, that put all of this insight and wisdom into me, and this is the product that you see today. And now it's my obligation to do it for others.
Standing on the shoulders of wise people, right?
Ancestors, all about the ancestors. You are the product of your ancestors. Their fight, their struggle, their cries, their tears, but their resiliency, their fight, all of that. We are their dreams. We are their wildest imaginations come true.
And because of that, I know you've taken on oral traditions in a way of, getting that story out there and informing other people. Do you want to give us a taste of that?
Sure. So I'll tell you a story that I usually tell when I introduce myself to new audiences, whether I'm working with people in recovery, whether I'm doing a performance, whether I'm doing an interview. This is kind of, I guess you can call it my signature story, but it's my signature story because it really kind of captures the essence of me. It captures the essence of Discover Me, Recover Me, and it captures the essence of why I do what I do.
Okay.
So here's the story. So there was once an elder woman, and every day this elder woman would walk through the forest. It was her refuge. It was her way of meditation. It was her way of connecting with the divine. And one day, as she was on her daily pilgrimage through the forest, she came across a stone. And she had seen many things in her advanced age. And she had seen many stones. So she knew that this stone was unlike any she had ever seen before. There was something special and something precious about it. So what she did was she picked the stone up, she put it in her pouch, and she kept walking. So as she was continuing on her journey, she came across a young man who was coming in the opposite direction. And as the young man got closer and closer to the elder woman, she could tell that he had been through some troubles. He looked tired, he looked hungry, he looked beat up. The young man finally approached the elder woman and he asked her, "Ma'am, do you have anything that I can eat? Do you have anything that I can drink? Can you help me in any way?" And it wasn't long until his eyes caught that precious stone that was in the woman's pouch. And the moment that his eyes saw that stone, he was no longer tired, he was no longer hungry, he was no longer thirsty. There was only one thing that he wanted. And so he asked, "Ma'am, may I have that stone that is in your pouch?" And without any hesitation, without even thinking about it, she took that stone out of her pouch, she gave it to the young man, and she kept walking. So the elder woman is going in one direction, and the young man is going in a different direction. And he's holding this precious stone in his hand. He's thinking to himself, with this stone, I'm no longer tired. With this stone, I'm no longer hungry. With this stone, I'm no longer thirsty. This stone is the answer to all of my prayers. But after a while, he stops in his tracks and he just kind of looks around. He takes in the ambiance of the forest for the first time in his journey. And after a while, he turns around and he catches up with that elder woman. And when he does, he asks her this question: "Ma'am, may I have whatever it is inside of you that allows you to give me this stone so freely?" So that's the story of the precious stone, and to me, it's a beautiful metaphor for the gifts and talents that we all possess. Granted, we could hoard them, and a lot of people do, unfortunately, but there's a greater joy and there's a greater benefit to yourself and to humanity when you share those gifts with others. To me, there's no greater happiness, and I can say this personally. I feel much better helping people than getting things.
Yeah, definitely.
I really, really do. I like things, don't get me wrong. But, in terms of happiness, that moment where you see a revelation in somebody or when someone gets it or achieves something and you are part of the assistance of that, yeah, there's really no better feeling. And me, with storytelling, that's what it's all about, is helping people discover their stories, helping people proclaim their stories, to really express their truth the way they see fit, and seeing the revelation in so many people when they feel that empowerment to tell their story. There's nothing like it.
It's indescribable.
Well, I can describe it, but but it just feels good. It just feels good because there's so much power in your story. I mean, this is media, right? So media is nothing but storytelling, and we know how powerful media is.
It can be geared to whatever they want you to know.
Exactly. So it's very powerful, and unfortunately, it can be very manipulative, and we're seeing that in so many different ways. So if everyone has the same power to tell their story, and no matter what the avenue or the the platform is, then that gets us closer to the truth. There's usually his side, her side, and the truth. If everyone is telling their story, at some point we're going to hear the truth.
Exactly.
And that's what we need now more than ever.
You're going to have to get that ability to discern what it is between all those stories. Now, I know when you come to storytelling, do you usually go and learn these stories from somewhere else? Do you create them on your own? I know you're very educated. By the way, you guys, this man has gotten his doctorate. I'm so proud of him.
I mean, if you really want to know about it, just ask me. But it just means I was crazy enough to go to school for 4 more years after I had to. Well, I kind of had to because my parents said you have to do better than us, and they both had master's degrees. So it didn't really leave many options. Basically, either what is there? A PhD, an MD, a JD, a PsyD, EDD. So I got the PhD, and my sister got the MD. She's way smarter than me. So honestly, PhDs are for slackers. But
the motivation was mom and dad.
The motivation was all mine, and I'll tell you why. I knew they set the bar very high.
Yeah.
My father came to this country for education, so that should tell you all you need to know. My
Don't
mother,
waste it.
one of the first people in her family to go to college, and then went on to get a master's degree as well. So education was to them the answer.
Yeah.
And it made a lot of sense. So college was always the expectation, not anything else but an expect. Like, you will go to college.
My mother said college or the curb.
Pretty well, mine was more like college or death. But so college was always, it was always going to happen, and it was just a matter of figuring out, of course, what I wanted to do. So I wanted to be an aerospace engineer since I was 5 years old. I always loved planes. I loved the idea of these big hunks of metal flying, miles above the earth, rarely crashing. I'll say never crashing, rarely crashing. Just the ingenuity and the brains to make something like that seems to defy logic was incredible to me, and I wanted to be a part of that. But when I hit college, I couldn't get past physics. Physics is one of the hallmarks of engineering. I barely passed chemistry. I got a C. And I tried physics once, and I withdrew. And I tried it again, and I withdrew again. You can only, withdraw from a class twice. And that was it. That was the end of my engineering journey. And it was devastating. I'll be honest. It was quite devastating. This dream that I had since I was a little kid, and once I actually got the chance to actualize it, wasn't happening. It just wasn't me.
Go ahead, different plan.
Yeah. Well, and what made it okay to go down a different path for me was my father. My father was always the stoic one. He was always kind of the cut and dry person. So when I called him, and I was definitely crying because I didn't know what to do. I was overwhelmed, all this kind of stuff. And he said, do what makes you happy, and do what you're good at. And hearing that from him, sure, if I heard it from my mother, it would still be very powerful. But hearing it from him, the person who was always cut and dry, that gave me a strong sense of comfort to actually pursue what I was good at. And what I was good at was listening to people, analyzing their conflicts, analyzing their troubles, and giving them advice and giving them insight that could hopefully better their lives. So I pursued psychology. And I picked up criminology and criminal justice, mostly because there was a lot of overlap in the classes, but I was also interested in why people commit crimes. What's the thought process? What's the environmental process behind that? And that took me down the path ultimately to public health. And what got me through my PhD, and what got me to even choose this path in terms of getting a doctorate, was I had to do it for me. My parents weren't going to take the classes for me.
Nope.
They weren't going to take the exams for me. They sure weren't going to do the dissertation for me. I had to have my own motivation and my own reasoning for doing it. And really what it was having the opportunity to really delve into the questions and just the nuances of my experience as a black man in America, understanding the opportunities that I got and seeing the opportunities that so many others did not have. And even today, it still bothers me why I was able to have a lot of success that many people would not expect for somebody who looks like me, yet there were others in my neighborhood, literally in my block, that didn't come close to the things that I did. And I love myself, and yes, I think I'm special, but I think they were special too. So why didn't they have the chance to manifest all of their abilities? Why just me?
What do you think the underlying reason from your perspective is?
I would say that, the biggest difference for me was definitely my parents. My parents were very active, not just in my education, but creating a very holistic educational experience. So not just the academics, but artistically, culturally, physically, all of those things were front and center with what I did. I think the cultural aspect is really what made the difference for me. Being a part of the National Great Blacks and Wax Museum that my godparents founded. My mother had been a part of the museum since it was a traveling exhibit. So having this real understanding of who I was as an African, as a black person in this world, knowing the truth of who I was, created such a, I think, protective factor for me. Basically, white folks couldn't tell me anything else. You couldn't tell me what I didn't about me. I know about me. I will tell you about me. I will tell you about us because I truly know. And I think just having that knowledge, having that understanding, changed the trajectory of my life without a doubt. You can take even if I didn't get a PhD, even if I didn't go down certain routes, that alone would have improved my life so much. And then you add on all the other things that I did. that made such a huge difference. But I thank my parents, I thank my family, I thank my extended family. I mean, like I said, this work, this work of art had a lot of hands in it. I mean, and I'm grateful to them all for it.
So a lot of the times when blacks take on a strong role, right? And you've been quoted as saying you are a disruptor of the system, right? Mm-hmm. So when we take on a strong role, then it is automatically perceived in a lot of cases that we are anti-white, anti-Asian, anti-Hispanic, anti-other, mm-hmm. right? So what do you feel about that?
That's crap. I'm not I'm anti-racism. I'm anti-sexism. I'm anti-homophobia. I'm anti-transphobia. So if you want to call me anti, then I'm anti-systems of oppression to whomever it affects. And yes, my orientation is to black people. So racism is front and center, the thing I'm most anti. And I've had these experiences since 6th grade when I first went to a predominantly white school. So that was my introduction to white people. It really, really was. And
we were talking about that over there.
and it was a culture shock. I've been around black people my whole life, and now all of a sudden I am the physical minority. There's only a handful of people who look like me in my class, and it challenged me. I won't lie. Yeah, I'm black as all black, but at that point it was a culture shock, and I had to figure out through experience. Okay, I have to first understand who I am, but also appreciate who others are. So I got exposed to a lot of aspects of cultures that were not my own and could grow to appreciate them while still maintaining the essence of who I am as a black person. So those experiences and even moving to college and grad school, I've always had opportunities to expose people to the realities of this world through my perspective. And I don't do it as an adversary. So it's not about saying, you should know this or you should know that or poo-poo you because you don't know. A lot of people simply don't know. And honestly, if I was a white person, would I really want to know how ugly racism is? Probably not. It's going to rock your world. And that's the thing. It literally is an existential crisis for a lot of people who don't understand how bad racism is or how bad sexism is. And that if you leave them shook, and don't give them a way to kind of rectify that, then you've done more harm than good. That's not something that you should introduce. It's heavy. It's really heavy. So you shouldn't just say, let me tell you what racism is and then just leave it at that. How can they be a part of the solution? And people need to just know, again, what are you good at? What can you provide that actually starts to address this multi-layered, multifaceted, multidimensional institution that is, again, hundreds, if not thousands of years old, so it will not be addressed in a day. I think the biggest thing people need to understand is that what the change that you'll see, the ultimate goal will not be seen in your lifetime. You just have to accept that. I've accepted I won't see everything I want in my lifetime.
So then you've gotten involved in different ways. So what are some of the ways? Because you're talking about, not just laying this burden that we've been carrying around with us for centuries on people, but to expose them and then give them a course of action. So what are some of the things and ways that you've gotten out and involved?
So I'm fortunate that I can occupy a lot of different sectors, first and foremost as a researcher. So just, again, looking at the science of racism, how does it manifest in many different environments? That serves a purpose, and not just doing the research and publishing the papers, but getting the research to those who can actually make those changes, particularly lawmakers. That's something I'm always. That's something. Yeah, definitely vote. I don't care who you vote for, just vote. It definitely makes it. It makes a difference. And it's always something I'm always working on. I haven't had that always figured out, but it's about building relationships. So the reason I call myself a mercenary for change is because yes, you will pay me. Either you pay me in money or you pay me in relationships, and both are valuable to me. So for me, every relationship is an opportunity to tell my story and to tell the larger truth. And a lot of times when you do that, certainly I've had success when I do it, is people, they get it. Most people are logical. They understand it. It's like they're not completely oblivious to these things. It's just they are unafraid. They're afraid to address it head on. It's heavy. They don't know how to address it. They don't know. They're afraid to say the wrong thing or offend somebody because they're probably used to so many adversaries, as opposed to somebody who says, I get it, I understand. Let me reorient your perspective on certain things so that you do get it. And then when I do hit you with all of this, it's like, what can you do about it? So I see my service as that, but then also thinking about the solution. So art and culture are very important to me, and to me, arts and culture are a very viable modality by which to address these larger systemic issues. So in Baltimore, one of the things that I'm doing is working on a plan for the city. You know, Baltimore is a very artistic city. It really, really is. But so much of the talent leaves Baltimore because the infrastructure is not there to support them. And what people don't understand is if you have a viable arts and culture scene where you actually support those artists, let's just talk dollars and cents. Those are more taxpayers in your city. So if you are a government, does that not sound like a good thing? Mayor Pugh.
Shouting you out. We both work in the art scene in Baltimore. Right? And so I know you do a few things, you act, sing, dance, whatever it takes. And where do you do that at?
So I do it in a number of different ways. Okay. So Discover Me, Recover Me, which is my organization, we focus primarily on storytelling. We do performances under that name, but mostly it's the healing practices using storytelling, workshops. Matter of fact, I'm going to Pittsburgh tomorrow to do a workshop with the Allegheny County Department of Human Resources to teach their professionals who work with children, who work with other individuals dealing with particular challenges, how to incorporate storytelling into their healing practices. So the one thing we say is that storytelling and all the work that we do associated with storytelling is not the solution. It's an addition to the solutions that are already being practiced. So I do things as an individual. I do things with my mother, who's also a storyteller and a singer. I'm a part of an organization called Woundward Productions, which is a social change theater company, really a performing arts company, but theater is their main modality. I've been with them since 2001. I'm still performing with them. We just had a show on Saturday. We got one on this coming Saturday that I may or may not do if I can actually make the rehearsals. Sorry. They know I'm busy.
Yeah, they've been reminded.
Oh, they know I'm busy. They like at this point, they understand my schedule. They know I'll come through for them as much as I can. Sometimes I can, most times I can, sometimes I cannot, but they're great. So they don't need me. I just help when I can. And with them, like I said, theater is the main thing that they do. African drumming, African dancing, singing, other forms of dance as well. Strong teaching components. So they've been working in schools. We've worked with other organizations.
A lot of outreach.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And really, I think now the organization's at a place where they're really elevating their work, because they've always been like a diamond in the rough in Baltimore. Like people who know about them, and they've never had the citywide reach that they really deserve and have worked towards. And I think now we're starting to turn that corner. I say that not only as a performer, but as the board president. Which they asked me to do because nobody else wanted to do it, but it's okay. It's working out though. It's working out though. Like we're making it happen, and I'm so glad that I've stuck with Moonwork. So I had a brief hiatus when I was going to college. I couldn't come back to Baltimore like I could, but I came back and I love it. It's another way for me to express myself. Like my persona when I'm in front of the camera or just on stage is different than usually who I am off. But I need both of them. Like I need to satisfy both sides. Yes, satisfy both sides of my personality. Woundwork does that, and it's really magical in a lot of ways. The work that they do. So I'm glad they're starting to get the shine that they really deserve.
So then, David, how do people go about finding you on like different platforms, social media, websites, where?
So you have to be able to spell my last name correctly if you want to find me.
Then spell it out.
So Fakunle. So I'm very grateful to say that if you Google me, you'll actually see quite a few things on me. I don't keep track of all the things that I do, and that's a good thing. Like there's some things that I found out about myself that I didn't even know was happening.
I Googled them. You'll be able to find them.
Yeah. So I mean, I've done videos, so I'll just highlight a couple of them. So I participated at a fellowship for Salzburg Global Seminar, which has been around since post-World War II, which a lot of very prominent people have done. I had no idea it even existed. So you know what that means. Like it's legit. Like the good things you don't know about. So I participated in that, and I was able to do a video just talking about storytelling. I was fortunate to parlay that because of relationships. Parlay that to do a fellowship with the Aspen Institute. Aspen, very beautiful city, but it takes too long to get used to the high altitude. That's the only thing. I did not sleep well. I needed to be
the first time I went to Colorado, y'all, I ran across the street and threw up on the other side.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, I did not sleep, but the hotel was, campus was gorgeous, but so I did that, did another video talking about story. So it's like, the one thing I'm very grateful for is that, especially in this day and age, people are starting to acknowledge how powerful storytelling is. I feel like they always knew unconsciously, but anytime people ask me to tell my story, it's like, wow, now you got to tell it here, now you got to tell it there. And again, it's just other opportunities to share my truth, but to encourage others to tell their story. So one of the things that I've done recently is work with Red Bull. And Red Bull has a social entrepreneurship component called Amapiko. Amapiko is Zulu for wings. Red Bull gives you wings. I see what they did there. Started in Brazil, went to South Africa, came to the United States last year in my city, Baltimore. So got to work with them, and I facilitate workshops on storytelling, working particularly with social entrepreneurs. Again, a major component of building up your brand is what's your story? What's your story? How do you tell your story? And believe it or not, a lot of social entrepreneurs do have a story. They just don't know how to really quantify it. And that's where I come to provide assistance with them being able to really think about quantifying their story and what's the overall message that you want to deliver. So I'm very fortunate to do that. And again, all the opportunities, I always try to parlay them to helping the people. So it's not about building my rep. It's not about building, my influence. Well, I do want to build influence to help others,
Because the bigger you build your influence, the more people you can then reach.
Exactly. And I'm grateful. It's happening. It really, really is. It's been it started when I got to school at Hopkins, when I started my PhD. Hopkins has a lot of prestige. So the moment you say you at Hopkins, like, oh, let me take you seriously now. And it opened doors. So I would say more so than the degree itself, which is great. It was the relationships. It was the opportunities that presented itself at Hopkins that I was able to take advantage of that helped me to have a larger influence on people and those opportunities.
Let me go and emphasize this, because I tell my kids all the time, you go to college, it's not necessarily for the piece of paper, which may or may not give you a bigger income or anything else, but it's the relationships that you build while you're there between the professors, between the future lawyers, doctors, entrepreneurs that you meet and then become friends with, and then later in life you never know how that'll play out. So you can go places and influence people. But you guys, there's no substitute for on the field type of training. You have your book training, you have your book smarts, but there's also a thing called common sense, which isn't always so common these days.
Right, exactly.
And practical application and things like that. So a balance. We're always talking about balance, and especially between the artistic world and the business world and everything else.
And if I do nothing else, it's really challenging people on how to apply their talents to generational challenges. So people have been dealing with the issues within public health. We talk about the opioid epidemic, which is now all of a sudden an issue because white people are dying from it. Let's just be real. Call a spade a spade. When we talk about poverty,
you said it, not me.
Hey, find me. You know what I'm saying? When we talk about all these manifestations of inequities and inequalities, people have been dealing with these for generations. We've gotten some success, but not where we would like to be. And sometimes it just takes looking at it from a different perspective, but then applying a different talent to it. So people seem to be so, not shocked, but surprised at how effective storytelling is. And what I tell people is you don't need a degree for storytelling. You don't need certification, qualifications. I'm fortunate that I learned under a very prominent storyteller, may she rest in peace. But you can learn from anybody. It's a very simple and straightforward art form. You know what I mean? And the applications of it just require think about it, dream, just go wild. Like this now is a time where you have to think outside of the box. The box only seems to be getting smaller.
It does. But you guys, unfortunately, we are running out of time.
That's quick.
Yes, it goes really quick. However, if you follow us on Facebook at Get It Got It Good, or you can follow me, Naja Woolhite or Naja Carter on Facebook. Yes, I have two last names. Don't get me started.
Two. I got one.
You can actually follow us on Facebook. I will post follow-up with David on there, ways to contact him as well to get more information about storytelling. Once again, I want to thank my sponsors, Dance Solutions and Mission Dance Works, which you can also find on Facebook as well on websites. under the same name. So, with that being said, I look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday. I want to thank you, David, for coming in and joining us and giving us a little bit of, education. There's more where that came from. But we will see you next Wednesday, same place, same time on WBGR Health and Wellness. Thank you all for tuning in. And remember, be an original, because an original is always worth more than a copy. Bye, guys.
State and local government exercise very important functions in the United States. They are responsible for creating state legislation, which can become state law. They plan and pay for roads, run public schools, parks and libraries, provide water and utilities, and organize law enforcement, elections, and much more. As citizens, local government is more easily obtainable and are the means in which we communicate to the federal government. This is why it is important that we vote in more than just primary presidential elections. Midterm and local elections are just as, if not more, important for our communities and its efficiency. Resistance is local. Criminal justice reform is local. Gentrification is local. And the right to vote is a privilege that once was not granted to all citizens because of their gender, race, or ethnicity. So today, we are all afforded this right, and we should vote at every given opportunity, simply because we can. Early voting is October 25th through November 1st, and the official midterm election date is November 6th. For more information on voting and polling,